tune.
Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Lydia, and together we're here to talk cars. Everything about your car, from right behind of your car to the front, in and around your car. If it has to do with cars, then you eventually get to see it right here on Vroom Vroom.
And it's important, because given our hectic lives in urban areas like Accra or many other African cities, your car is more than just a means of getting around. It is how you protect yourself in many situations. And so anything that affects your car is a huge deal.
So let's dig in. What are we looking at today?
Your car in the age of COVID-19. How best do you protect yourself so that your car doesn't become a means by which you get infected unknowingly?
Yeah, that's very important.
It is. It's something that we need to think about very carefully. And so how do we make sure our cars become our ultimate PPE? Lots of questions, lots of things to get into. See you after the commercial break in a moment. All right, everyone, welcome back. Vaccinations are still ongoing and infections are dropping. That's the great news. But COVID-19 still remains a real threat. We have with us on Vroom Vroom today Dr. Kafui Tettey, who is a public health specialist. Doc, welcome to Vroom Vroom.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
So, Doc, I think with the distance between us, we can take these masks off for now, right?
Yes, exactly so.
Okay, great. So, Doc, tell us, how best do we keep our vehicles from becoming a means by which we get infected?
Thank you very much, Daniel. Well, as we know, 2020 till now has been a very interesting period because of this COVID-19 pandemic. It has changed the way we live our lives, drastically. Now, globally, the figures have gone down, which is a relief, but we still have areas or countries where the infection is still a serious problem. Nationally, in Ghana, thankfully, the figures are down, but it is still a problem, so we shouldn't let our guards down. We need to look at all possible avenues of infection and then tackle it so that we keep the infection at the barest minimum. Now, before we look at this question about mitigating spread in vehicles, let's remind ourselves about how COVID-19 is spread. Basically, it is spread by droplet infection and also by touching contaminated surfaces and then applying those our hands to our eyes, nose, and mouth. That's essentially how it is spread, So now that we know this, we are going to apply this knowledge in mitigating spread in vehicles. And Daniel, I'm going to focus on commercial vehicles for obvious reasons. They carry a lot of people. They are very busy. The risk of infection in using commercial vehicles is much higher than in private vehicles, because of the number of people who use commercial vehicles. And of course, all these principles can be applied in private vehicles as well. And I'm going to look at it in three different ways. First of all, preventing infection from, let's say, getting into the vehicle. Then while you're in the vehicle, preventing spread within the vehicle. And then after the ride, what do we do after the ride? So these are the three ways I'm going to look at it. So before you get into a commercial vehicle, there are certain things we should be looking at or certain things we should be doing. So before you get into the vehicle, for example, we should be checking the things we usually do now. We need to check the temperatures of passengers. Now I'm talking from a public health perspective. These are things ideally we should be doing. We need to be checking the temperatures of passengers before they get into the vehicle to see whether the temperatures are elevated. We need to be screening the passengers to see whether they look ill. And in getting into the vehicle, usually we queue or we cluster around the doorway. We need to be observing social distancing, which means we need to be organizing the queues, in an orderly way so that there's some form of social distancing.
The queues need to be spaced out.
The queues need to be spaced out, Exactly so. And then also before getting into the vehicles, we need to make provision for hand washing, either hand washing or sanitizing of passengers before getting into the vehicles. So ideally, every passenger should carry a sanitizer, a nice portable sanitizer bottle with them, so that you use it before you get into the vehicle. Also, hand washing basins or amenities can be provided before you get into the vehicle. This is very important. Also, we need to put reminders or signs on the vehicles. You know, no mask, no entry, social distancing, that kind of thing, you know, to remind people before they get into the vehicle that this is what they are supposed to be doing. As passengers, if you think you are sick, especially if you have, how should I put it, suggestive symptoms, you know, like the coughing, the fever, the chest pain, headache, those kinds of things that we typically associate with COVID-19, you may consider staying at home rather than taking a commercial vehicle, which will make you a nidus or a point or a source of infection to others. And looking ahead, looking into the future, it's possible that we may even have to demand COVID tests before you get onto vehicles, especially if they are long-distance vehicles. Or we may demand to inspect vaccination cards before you get into vehicles that are long-distance vehicles, you know, kind of like it's being done for the airlines, you know. So these are some of the steps we need to take to prevent infection from getting into the vehicle.
So yes, you made this point about if someone is coughing, if you know you are coughing and you know or sneezing or anything like that, then it's advisable not to take public transport. But you know, there are some people who are just susceptible to coughs and, you know, the least amount of, you know, whether it's allergies or dust or whatever, and off they go. How do they distinguish between that and a COVID-19 cough?
Exactly. Well, like you said, some people have allergies, for example,
Right.
you know, so they tend to sneeze and cough a bit more, you know. I think we know ourselves. So if you are that kind of type, you know, and you're coughing and sneezing, you know, it's an allergy causing that, maybe we can give you a pass. But even then, you know, you keep your mask on and you observe the social distancing, you know, that is the way to go. I mean, no matter what steps you take, it's possible that some may go through and still get into the vehicle. So when you're in the vehicle, what do we do to prevent infection from spreading within the vehicle? It's very important that we continue with the social distancing, even within the vehicle. You know, we leave a meter apart, which means the vehicle cannot be fully loaded. It cannot be at full capacity. Social distancing is very important within the vehicle. We keep our masks on, even in the vehicle. As you enter the vehicle, you keep your masks on. Ideally, windows should be open, you know, because the virus tends to spread faster in enclosed environments, so the window should be open. If a passenger has to sneeze or cough, you know, you do the right thing by coughing into your elbow, you know, you basically muffle the cough so that you don't distribute the droplets to everybody within the vehicle. And within the vehicle, the mate or the mate has to continuously remind people to stick to the COVID protocols, you know, during the travel. Okay, also, once you enter the vehicle, it's important to keep your hands to yourself as much as possible. Try not to touch surfaces. Try not to rub your hands on the seat rail, on the doorknob, you know. Some people just like touching. Try and keep your hands to yourself as much as possible. And then, obviously, you are taking a commercial vehicle. You have to pay for your ride, you know. Money exchanges hands. The money is given out. Change is given back to you. And typically what happens is what? You hand the money over to the passenger in front of you. It gets passed on. Who passes it on and on. Who passes it on and on, all the way to the mates. That is a serious potential source of infection, you know. And ideally, this should be cashless, but I know this is hoping for too much. you know, it should be cashless. But what I'll suggest is that then, since it cannot be cashless, the person paying the money has to somehow hand it over directly to the mate so that it doesn't move from hand to hand to hand, you know. And then also combined with that, with regular sanitizing. As any time the mate or the passenger, you handle money, you handle any other objects from anybody, you sanitize as frequently as you can. So that is how we can go about that. You know, you give the money directly to the mate. You sanitize as frequently as possible to mitigate any source of infection.
So this point you are making, Doc, about distancing in vehicles means that the commercial vehicles cannot be fully loaded to capacity.
Exactly so. You see, this is a situation where, if you like, public health clashes with economics. You know, this is a situation where if people are not forced, you know, to do things a certain way, they will not do it because the motivation is not there. In fact, the motivation is to do the opposite. So speaking strictly from a public health point of view, this is the ideal situation. There has to be social distancing to mitigate the spread, you know. But then the business case or the economic case, you know.
Wow.
After exiting the vehicle as a passenger, the first thing you do is to sanitize again. You know, you sanitize as you're coming in, you need to sanitize your hands again as you're going out, or wash your hands so I don't carry any potential infection from the commercial vehicle to your workplace or your home. Very important. We tend to skip that a lot. The next part is left for the mate or the driver. You know, the surfaces in the vehicle have to be decontaminated. Very important. Lots of people have come into the vehicle, they have exited. You know, you don't know what they came into the vehicle with, despite all your initial measures. So you need to decontaminate all the surfaces within the vehicle as much as possible, especially the very frequently touched surfaces like doorknobs, dashboard, the steering wheel, the seats, the seat rails. You know, you need to use a mild disinfectant or a 70% alcohol-based solution or bleach. You know, there are lots of solutions you can use. Just use one that does not decolor your dashboard or something, but it's very important. You need to decontaminate it and get ready for the next batch of people who will be coming in so that you know that you're not moving infection from one batch of people to the next.
How much of this is applicable to private vehicles? Would this apply to me and my little car if I had to give a ride to a colleague from work or a neighbor?
All this is pretty much applicable. The only difference is that obviously the person giving somebody a ride does not have the huge numbers of passengers to deal with. So obviously as the person is getting in, you know, don't be shy, remind the person, you know, keep your mask on, sanitize, keep your hands to yourself, don't touch surfaces too much. You, the driver or car owner, make sure you are decontaminating the surfaces in the car as much as possible. As a passenger, when you step out, sanitize again. You know, so all these things apply to private vehicles, to Ubers, to Bolts, to, you know, all forms of vehicles. Yes.
So viewers, you heard it yourselves, straight from the doc. Make sure you always have your sanitizer on you if you use commercial vehicles frequently. Don't go touching what you don't need to touch. Those masks, they are still working. And at the end of your ride, sanitize, sanitize, sanitize. If you heard nothing at all, sanitize. Thank you so much, Doc.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.
Our pleasure as well. Our pleasure as well. Guys, we'll be right back with more Vroom Vroom.